I have peach tea today. Look at my lovely drinkware. I'm sure you're astounded by the lovely drinkware I'm using. Hi readers, it's Lori. Welcome back, and thanks for coming back to this series today, which is called To Read or Not to Read. I started this last year, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I must have. Maybe the first of this year, in an effort to go through the books on my shelves and purge a few that I maybe would never be getting to. I just sort of on a whim grab some books that I haven't been drawn to for a while and then decide, is this something I'm really going to read? And if so, keep it. And if not, then I purge it and usually put it in the little free libraries in my neighborhood. So let's get started. Today's theme is big, big, big books. Big books. Yeah. So we'll start with this one. This is, Ken Follett's Winter of the World. Now this came from the library book fair. I pulled the cover off of it, and it actually, they had cut somehow, I don't know how that happens, but anyway, this is damaged a little bit, but it's in really good shape otherwise. Winter of the World is book 2 in the Century Trilogy. Book 1 is Fall of Giants. Ken Follett writes huge historical fiction works, and I love the Pillars of the Earth adaptation. I've never read, though, anything by Ken Follett, because almost all of his books are these giant honking pieces of, I'm sure, astounding detail. So the Centuries Trilogy, and why it appealed to me and why I got it, I'm sure, first of all, it has a map. Love that map of the European theater. You see where this is going? From 1939 to 1945. So this is a trilogy that really follows. It says this one picks up where book 1 left off, as its 5 interrelated families, American, German, Russian, English, and Welsh, enter a time of enormous social, political, and economic turmoil, beginning with the rise of the Third Reich through the Spanish Civil War and the great dramas of World War II, to the explosions of the American and Soviet atomic bombs and the beginning of the long Cold War. It follows Carla von Ulrich and American brothers Woody and Chuck Dewar, English student Lloyd Williams, Daisy Peshkov, who is probably from Russia, and her cousin Volodya. Okay. Now I remember why I bought it. I didn't look before this video, so I had no idea what possessed me to pick this up. Now I know. So that's that. This is going to give me a great workout today. Oh, they're heavy. Number 2, also a book fair pick. The Tea Rose by Jennifer Donnelly. Never read anything by this author. This is a floppy, nice-sized paperback. Historical fiction as well, I'm certain, because it was in that part of my shelf. Has a reading group guide, which is always nice. It is 557 pages. Okay, so the Tea Rose follows early East London, 1888, place of shadow and light. Thieves, whores, dreamers mingle. Children play in the cobbled streets. A killer stalks at night. Okay. Bright hopes meet the darkest truths. The whispering waters of the Thames. Fiona Finnegan, a worker in a tea factory, hopes to own a shop one day together with her love, Joe Bristow. With nothing but their faith in each other to spur them on, Fiona and Joe struggle, save, and sacrifice to achieve their dreams. And then her life is shattered because this man takes from her nearly everything and everyone she holds dear. She fears she will die, so she leaves London for New York and then ends up in Manhattan's West Side tea trade area. Her old ghosts do not rest quietly, and she must go back to London, where a deadly confrontation with her past becomes the key to her future. And there's a sequel to the Tea Rose, which is called The Winter Rose. Great. So if I keep this and I read it, you know what's going to happen there. I need a drink. These are very, they're very difficult decisions to make here. All right. A Team of Rivals, or Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. I got this because I grew up in Illinois, land of Lincoln. Spent lots of field trips to Springfield in school. They would take us from the Chicago area to Springfield, and we would just do all the Lincoln stuff. Lincoln Park Zoo. Yeah, just Lincoln was in my bones as a child. And I really identified with the man and the political life and how he came from nothing and made so much out of his life. And I always just was fascinated by Mary Todd Lincoln and by the Civil War and all those things. So Doris knew that I would want to grab this. Also a floppy, giant trade paperback. Lots of notes, reference notes in the back. So it is a, goodness sakes, highly researched, I'm sure, novel, 754 pages. I got this because I had seen the movie adaptation from this book, which I think was called Lincoln, with Daniel, let's see his face, Daniel something. Loved it. And have always been somewhat fascinated by how Lincoln managed to unite a nation after so much dissent and political divide, much like we have now, and the issue of slavery being such a catalyzing and yet divisive issue where people were on completely opposite sides, and hate was rampant and war was costly, and yeah, kind of what we're afraid of now in many, many ways. I would love to see what his strategy was. I'm always fascinated with politics and relationships and the divide or not divided Congress and all those things. And so that's why I bought it, or got it, acquired it in some way. I think I bought it. It's very detailed. It's very dense. I mean, it's very dense. There's not a lot of space there. I Am Now Public Property. What a great title for a chapter. Maybe if I read the first bit of it. It is called, the subtitle is The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln. So it's not a biography of his life. It really is a biography of how he navigated the difficult waters of his presidency. 4 Men Waiting. On May 18th, 1860, the day when the Republican Party would nominate its candidate for president, Abraham Lincoln was up early. As he climbed the stairs to his plainly furnished law office on the west side of the public square in Springfield, Illinois, been there, breakfast was being served at the 130-room Chenery House on 4th Street. Yep. Fresh butter, flour, lard, and eggs were being put out for sale at the city grocery store on North 6th Street, and in the morning newspaper, the proprietors at Smith, Wickersham and Company had announced the arrival of a large spring stock of silks, calicos, ginghams, and linens, along with a new supply of the latest styles of hosiery and gloves. I mean, I guess she's setting the scene for this particular time in the nation and in Chicago or in Illinois. So I guess that's the point of that. But it's not really something that makes me go, oh, tell me more. Although it kind of does. I mean, they're going to nominate him for president, so there's that. Yeah, maybe. Okay. And the last one is Locked On by Tom Clancy. Not really, though, because it's actually written by Mark Greaney. So I also got this from the library, but not on the book sale. It was a blind date with a book the last year that I picked one of those. I read Tom Clancy's Hunt for Red October years and years ago when it first came out. My dad read it. He loved it. He passed it on to me. I read it. I did love it. And I read maybe one or two more of his over the years. I like the adaptation, which is called Jack Ryan, which is on Amazon Prime, I think. I love John Krasinski, so I do watch that. I need to watch the next season of that. Tom Clancy. Okay, so, but really not, because he died. So Mark Greaney. So this says he brings together his greatest characters and a new generation to fight the war on terror. Ah, so there's Jack Ryan Jr., who's training to be a special forces operative, if you will. And Jack Sr., an enemy of Jack's. Jack Sr. is campaigning for re-election as President of the United States. Well, that's a spoiler. I'm sorry that I just sent out there. An enemy of Jack Sr.'s launches a vendetta to discredit him by connecting him to the mysterious killing in the past by John Clark, who was his ally. And Clark is on the run, and Jack Ryan Jr. and his team have to stop a threat emerging in the Middle East. Breakneck speed military action scenes made him the premier thriller writer of our time. That's true. These are military political thrillers, and I love a thriller. It's big. It's not, though, look, it's not terribly big print. It's not terribly dense. It's spaced pretty well apart, so I don't think it would take a long time to read, even though it is 850 plus pages, looks like 853. I'm actually more excited about it. So when I opened it, I have to say, I was like, oh, Tom Clancy. And then I was like, oh, Tom Clancy. I don't read a lot of Tom Clancy anymore. But now I pulled it off the shelf because it's been sitting there and I haven't even looked at it or attempted or considered reading it. But now, okay. So let me get another sip of peach lemonade. I recognized when I did the scavenger hunt, I've said this in another video, that I don't read a lot of male authors, and I'm sad about that. I used to actually read more male authors than female authors for a time, and then I kind of evened that out. And now it's not even anymore at all. So there's definitely some room for me to expand and diversify my reading. When I began, I would have said to you that I was going to unhaul this and not read it, but I have changed my mind. I think I am going to read this, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy it, even though I've missed a lot because I didn't know some of the things that I just found out. But I'm going to keep it. I am not going to unhaul that. Ugh. Team of Rivals is a heavy, heavy book, physically heavy, and it looks like it would be a heavy read. Again, very dense, very well researched. I don't know how I'm going to like it, and I also still feel like I might. I could listen to it. I could just let it percolate in the background and read and listen to it when I have a minute and not feel like I have to start to finish it in a specific period of time. I put fewer books on my goal in 2020 on my reading list because I wanted to leave space for more big books. So that's really intentionally what I wanted to do this year. And saying that, that's one of the reasons why I reached for these 4 books, because they were big and I needed to make a decision about them. So I'm going to keep this too and try to find it on audio or ebook so that it won't be quite so heavy physically and maybe experientially as I'm reading and listening to it. I'm going to keep that. So I'm kind of surprised about both of them. The Tea Rose, I'm going to keep this. I'm not surprised by that at all. As soon as I started reading it, I was like, East London, 1888. Yeah. And then Manhattan. Yeah. And I, again, never read Jennifer Donnelly, so she would be a new author to me. This one's pretty dense, tiny text, but I think, yeah, it appeals to me. I want to find out what happens to her. It has a sequel. Yes. Strong yes. Holy cow, 3 out of 4 so far. And they're all giants. Speaking of giants, Fall of Giants would have to happen first before I read this because it's a trilogy. It's not a new read, so maybe I'd be able to get Fall of Giants in a fairly easy, hopefully inexpensive way, or borrow it from somewhere. This was published in, these are these tiny little thin, 2012. So these are not, none of these are particularly new, I wouldn't say. This is the really, really thin paper, book paper. So it's going to be a big pumpkin read. And I'm sure the first one isn't any different. Ken Follett's work is never small. It would also probably help to listen to these, maybe ebook. Oh my goodness, I really feel led to keep all 4 of these. I'm keeping Ken and the Winter of the World too, with the obvious caveat that I'm going to have to read Fall of Giants first in order to make that work. And then the one after that, and I have no idea what that one's called. So that'll be a surprise. So my homework will be to look for those in hardback. So I have a copy of all 3 of them that sort of matches, and to look at which one of those I want to read first. And that's interesting too, because I would say that right now I'm feeling more compelled, weirdly, to read Locked On first by Tom Clancy. I wouldn't have thought that for a million years. When I pulled these down, I really had this sort of sense that Tom was not going to make the cut. And he did. And he not only made the cut, but he's kind of falling toward the top of the list. So that's probably my plan. But stay tuned, because I'll, of course, always give you a reading wrap-up about what happens next. And if I decide to unhaul them at some point in the future, I'll let you know that too. Thanks for joining me today, and I'm curious about what you thought of these books. I know sometimes my to read or not to read videos are filled with books that you may never have heard of and never had a care about. But if you've read any of them or they interest you, let me know, and I would be curious to see how you feel about them, especially if you've read any of them. That's always something that I'm curious about. And I would love to know what big books or authors who write really, really big books you enjoy, because it is my goal to read more of them this year. I am really hoping, and I was thinking about that this morning when I was journaling, I need to get back to Drums of Autumn by Diana Gabaldon so I can get that list down to a closer to being current with where she is. And I have a few others that I would like to tackle this year. But I would say that the reason I pulled these was because I thought, okay, I need to decide, am I going to read these? Am I not going to read these? And again, I'm somewhat shocked that I've decided to keep them all. So stay tuned. And as always, happy reading. Bye.